Thank you. Wow, this is a full house. So thank you for having me. We had a lovely dinner last night, and kudos to Matt, who was the only male person at the table of 13 women. So, but we had a really nice time, and it's so nice to see some familiar faces, Janie and Leon and John and Dana last night. So it's really a pleasure to be here, and I applaud anyone for bringing me to speak at their institution because of what the content's going to be. So it's really important that they're making this an important area for discussion. It never gets any easier talking about what I'm about to talk about, so bear with me. I often still cry every time. And so I normally just wing it when I talk, but for these talks, I have it written out word for word so I don't say anything misspeak because it's important. In February of 2022, I gave my presidential address, as Natalia alluded to, at the Association for Academic Surgery. Was anyone there in the room? Only a few people, okay. It's the reason that I'm here today, not my research or my other academic accomplishments. Beyond bringing my 2 children into the world, it was the most important thing that I've ever done. I say this not only because of the outpouring of emails, letters, and calls that I received and continue to receive in response, but because it was the culmination of a year of pain, uncertainty, and the hardest work I had known. It was genuinely an accomplishment just to make it there. I'm not going to repeat that speech today. It was meant for that time, true to where I was in my recovery. But I will repeat what got everyone's attention that day. Following an introduction that's common to many presidential addresses listing my athletic and academic achievements, I began my speech like this. Yes, I was the top junior tennis player in the nation, won the Junior US Open, and was ranked top 50 in the world professionally at the age of 16. I competed at Wimbledon 5 times. I'm an associate professor of surgery at Harvard. I have an NIH 1 grant. I am or was the president of the Association for Academic Surgery. And I am also human. I am a person with lifelong depression, PTSD, and a substance use disorder. None of my professional successes have protected me against this. I am not special. I am not a mental health expert. I have, however, read numerous books on related subjects, spoken with many experts and stakeholders, and now talked to many, many different groups. I've spent hundreds of hours in various forms of therapy over the past few years. These are personal lessons I have learned based on my own experiences and discussions. Dr. Christina Ray Barkley died by suicide on April 12th, 2012. She was a chief resident at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in surgery with a plan to become a transplant surgeon. She was bright, talented, deeply compassionate, and really funny. She was my dear friend. This is the first and last time she met my daughter. Emery is now 13. I continue to speak to honor Tina and the 300 to 400 physicians who die by suicide annually in the United States. Today's content may be uncomfortable or even upsetting to some of you, either because you don't think it's appropriate for me to discuss here, or maybe because it strikes close to home. It is uncomfortable to me too. My intention, however, is to provide a voice for those of you in the latter group that suffer in silence. Statistically, a significant portion of you. I'm not going to talk about wellness today. Wellness initiatives can be preventative, but they are not going to solve the existing mental health crisis. Burnout may lead to or exacerbate mental health disorders but it is not the sole cause. This is a talk about mindfulness, agency, compassion, and cultural humility. I know I am privileged to have this platform. I have resources to get help and a supportive work environment. I have many loyal, patient, and loving people that weathered the storm with me. And many people do not have this. Since my address, I have been asked many questions about who to go to for help, how to help a friend or colleague who is struggling, many wanting just to see how it turned out for me. Today, I thought I'd answer some of the most common questions I've received. During the year of my AAS presidency, which culminated in my speech in Houston and followed, can I get a napkin? This happens every time. If anyone who saw my speech, I was sniveling for the first 15 or 20 minutes. You can laugh, by the way. This doesn't have to all be sad. Thank you, appreciate it. Where was I? During the year of my AAS presidency, which culminated in my speech in Houston, following years of struggling, I had, thank you, a visit to my home on a Sunday morning by my mentor and boss from a night I hope I never remember. For those of you who know him, Rich Hoden was at my door. A call from the head of the MGH EAP, a referral to the Massachusetts Medical Society Physician Health Program, a formal evaluation of my fitness to practice medicine, which entailed a trip to Kansas City alone for 5 solid days of every psychological and neurocognitive test you can imagine, which resulted in this. This is my married name. Still hard to read. This was followed by 3 months in intensive inpatient and outpatient treatment, where I also spent my 50th birthday and finalized my divorce. It was a rough year. I continue monitoring with PHS, Physician Health Service, and I'm 2.5 years in at this point. It was bumpy, ugly, and terrifying. I was humiliated, broken, and at times hopeless. It was the hardest thing I have ever done and am still doing. Looking back, I don't think I would have stepped away from work unless I was forced to. Asking for help was not in my armamentarium. I imagine it's not for many people in this room. That was only the beginning, though. While you can force someone to step away from work, you can't make them do the real work it takes to make meaningful change. I understand why few do it. It was brutal. I'm here to say that it is worth it, though, and I'm incredibly grateful to those that made the difficult decision to tell. And I am grateful for all of it. From a therapeutic perspective, it was a risky thing to tell my story. I was and am scared today that I will not say the right thing or have the opposite of my intended impact. It didn't feel like a choice to me at the time, though. I felt compelled to try to change things so that others didn't get to the place that I did. Make it a little less hard for others to ask for help, and hopefully help others save their own lives. It was just the right thing to do. I felt the weight in the room during my talk that day. It was palpable and still, like it is right now. Thousands of people have viewed my YouTube video, millions read the Guardian article that ensued, and I'm not telling you any of that to pat myself on the back, but to illustrate how much people needed to hear it. That someone else felt the things that they do. The timing was right and it resonated. One of the consequences of the pandemic was that it put everyone on the same playing field. Everyone got sick, everyone was scared. Most of the world had to sit still, isolated, and the remainder worked tirelessly to care for critically ill patients. It was traumatizing for everyone. It made conversations about mental health possible and crucial. I think, in fact, I know that if I had given that speech a decade ago, it would have fallen on deaf ears and I would likely have been ostracized. This is my favorite. I've received a lot of interesting comments. They just aren't cut out for this. And variations of pull yourself up by the bootstraps and forget about the whole gender specific comments I've received. We sustained grueling training for 5 to 10 years. If it was a matter of hard work, depression would be non-existent in medicine. My story is not unique. Tina's story is not unique. Substance use disorders, those that are diagnosed, are significantly more common in physicians than the general population. 1 in 7. Doctors have double the suicide rate of the general population. Few seek help, and those that do write their own prescriptions, pay cash for medication, and go to other cities for treatment for fear of being found out. True to form, I also, while I was in rehab, developed a research study for the people who are going to be in the audience. Perhaps some of you in the audience actually filled it out, and thank you if you did. Our survey of over 600 members of the Association for Academic Surgery and SUS, including medical students and trainees, 14% of the respondents reported suicidal ideation, 10% within the prior 2 weeks of the ASC. Twice that of the general population. 60% of people who responded to the survey knew a colleague who had died by or attempted suicide. It isn't a one-off, and I am not an exception. Trainees and students are most at risk. Of thousands of interns followed prospectively, a third without a prior history, quote unquote, developed clinical depression which persisted over the following years of their residency, and only a quarter of them sought treatment. They have zero control over their schedules, are financially strapped, and fear not matching or obtaining a job if they do seek treatment or take needed time off. Death from suicide is not just a physician crisis. More people die from suicide in the United States than the number of people who died of breast cancer or colorectal cancer in the same year. This number has been increasing every year. 900,000 kids in the US attempted suicide in 2021. Despite being the 11th leading cause of death overall for all ages, number 2 for kids and young adults, number 1 being overdose, which I believe is also someone trying to kill themselves slowly. The stigma surrounding mental health is so powerful that we rarely discuss it, and funding for mental health research is abysmal. Thoughts of suicide do not hit suddenly. It is not impulsive. Depression can be insidious, progressive, and relentless. It isn't a character flaw or a weakness and says nothing about your competence as a physician. Those who have it know that it isn't all in your head, that it's physical and it's heavy. It is a chronic disease, but it is treatable. Some people like me need to be on lifelong medication. It pains me to think that physicians could get so much relief from a low dose of an antidepressant, but won't go on one to avoid having it on their record or having to report it for licensure. We must make it safe for physicians, trainees, and students to seek treatment. There are many opportunities along the disease progression to intervene. I have had many people, some friends I've known for a very long time, tell me about a particular gesture or conversation that unknowingly prevented them from self-harm. Contrary to commonly held beliefs, exposure to suicide content actually reduces suicidal thoughts and behavior. We have to talk about it. We have to honor and learn from the tragic loss of our loved ones and colleagues, not brush it under the rug. I think that the physician rate is because we let it get too far before it's treated, honestly. The people who select to go into medicine and to surgery and anesthesia, we're perfectionists. We have excessive and cumulative occupational trauma and moral injury, prior trauma before medical school that we carry with us, and the tenet of patients above all else in a fear of job and reputation loss if they seek treatment. Remember that everyone comes to the table with a different set of scars. Half of the survey respondents from the meeting reported a serious traumatic event prior to medical training. Sometimes the distance traveled is clear. Most times it is not. Don't assume you know where someone is coming from or what they are going through. As both an athlete, especially in individual sports and in surgery, I was trained to not show emotion and that it equaled weakness. I achieved almost anything I set my mind to and thought that the rules did not apply to me. I thought I should be able to fix myself. This room is filled with elite athletes, musicians, surgeons. This room is also filled with people who rarely ask for help. I'm sure of that. Mastery requires discipline, dedication, and focus. Perfectionism is driven by fear. It's unachievable. It impairs achieving mastery. Without failure, without uncertainty, there is no growth. When we fear discussing our weaknesses and see our failures as personal defects, we avoid true challenges and have a difficult time recovering from our inevitable errors. You only make mistakes when you're trying. You only have complications when you're operating a lot. And we are all fallible. While being perfectionistic undoubtedly leads to external successes, it is also the thing that prevents you from seeking help, from admitting to yourself or anyone else that you're human. If perfection is your goal, you will live your life in a constant state of failure. Another quote from my evaluation pretty much sums it up. Like alcohol is a temporary fix for anxiety, gratification from external achievements is a fleeting sense of self-worth. Your CV will never be long enough. I believe that the imposter syndrome that we talk about is a consequence of perfectionism. We compare our inner world to other people's narratives, their Instagram profile, their CV, and we are really tough inner critics. We do not even come close to affording the same compassion we give to others to ourselves. I come from a Midwestern blue-collar town of automotive workers. Is Jody in the room? Where's Jody? Many of my friends did not even go to college. 0 became doctors. I never felt like I belonged. Through this process, I feel less that way. These feelings lose their power when you say them out loud. They're thoughts and not truths. When you speak compassionately and honestly with others you trust, those with shared experiences, you begin to compare apples to apples. Quite honestly, the opportunities I feared losing by telling my story just don't carry much weight to me anymore. Now that I have some distance from that period of early recovery, I realize how difficult it is from the loved one, friend, or colleague's perspective. I have been able to pay it forward a number of times for other physicians and surgeons in the past few years. When you're in it, you're chaotic, defensive, and hurt. There's no thinking about 5 years down the road, only what is immediately in front of you, and it doesn't look good. You have to figure out a way to get the person to take one step in the positive direction without pushing them away. I was not easy or fun to deal with. It took me a long time to realize I wasn't a victim and that the only person out to get me was myself. If you sense that someone is struggling, you're probably right. We are well-trained physicians. We know when a patient is sick the moment we walk into a room. In whatever form that intervention takes, including talking directly and confidentially with the person, sharing your concerns with those closest to them, a trusted colleague, or if needed, appropriate leadership. It's uncomfortable, but do it anyway. They're going to tell you they're fine. They're going to get angry and defensive. If you don't know what to say, then say that. Just hold space with them. If you're worried that they will harm themselves, don't leave them alone. Their health is more important than their professional success and even their ability to practice medicine. Learn about the resources available before there's a crisis. Be an ally. I believe there will be some resources here at Stanford, which are incredible, by the way. I'm going to talk about physician health programs, although California does not have one. It's the only state in the union, ironically. But I want to talk about how they help me, and maybe someone will be inspired to try to advocate for one here in the state. I'll bet you no one knows what a physician health program is unless they've been involved with one. And I had never heard of them prior to my own referral to the Massachusetts Physician Health Service. I want to dispel any misconceptions. They help your institution navigate the process and provide oversight for physicians in crisis from mental illness, including substance use disorders and other health conditions, neurologic disorders, severe burnout. They are also there to advocate and protect you. They are there to prevent you from being reported to the licensing board. 80% of people are not known to the licensing board that are under contract with them. They take on the responsibility of reassuring your institution if and when you're healthy enough to practice medicine again. They ensure your accountability with monitoring and a long-term therapeutic plan. And it works. The majority of participants seeking consultation are not known to the medical board. It's peer-based, objective, and confidential. Confidential. In Massachusetts, as you can see, the route of referral is quite varied. In 2022, 25% of participants were self-referred, which is heartening to hear. The presenting problem was substance use in only a third of these. This is a great resource across the United States that is underutilized. Now I want to talk about addiction. Think about how the word addict makes you feel. Someone with a moral failing, selfish, indulgent, other. This painting from hundreds of years ago depicts the hungry ghost realm. The hungry ghost has an insatiable yearning for relief, seeking peace that can never be obtained externally. The definition of addiction is any activity, substance, or behavior that has become the focus of a person's life to the exclusion of other activities that causes harm to the individual or others physically, mentally, or socially. It isn't just a label, it's a process. It's a way of thinking, coping. It can manifest as excessive use of substances, overeating, gambling, sex, gaming, the socially glorified behaviors of a workaholic. The substance and behavior is the smoke and not the fire. In nearly every definition of the word stigma, mental health is used as the example. While the stigma surrounding mental health disorders is bad, it is 10 times worse for those with substance use disorders. William Halstead, father of modern-day residency programs, had a well-known cocaine and morphine addiction until the day he died, upwards of 150 milligrams of morphine a day. Why do I wear a scarlet letter? I am the one who hasn't had a drink in over 2 years. I do a breathalyzer 3 times a day, 7 days a week to prove it. Keep this in mind the next time someone tells you they're in recovery or a patient has substance use disorder listed on their past medical history. They're the ones doing the work and carrying that stigma. The next time you see the word addict, think of me. Addiction isn't fun. No one wants to be in rehab or planned on it. It's 5 to 8 hours a day of being brutally honest with yourself and others without any distractions, without the substance, without work, and without your family. Abstinence is only the beginning. The real work just starts. You have to change the way you think and the way you react. I understand why most people don't do it. It is a lot easier to just continue old habits. Recovery is time and space to focus on yourself, process trauma, developing healthy coping mechanisms, and repairing and nurturing authentic and meaningful connections with yourself and others. Deep inquiry, brutal honesty, and the most difficult self-compassion. Like any other skill, it requires discipline, dedication, and focus. The world would be a much better place if everyone was doing this. People in recovery are the most authentic and strongest people that I know. Of course, you don't know this in the beginning and you already feel backed into a corner. You're in fight or flight mode. Your amygdala is on overdrive. Trusting anyone is tough. It takes courage. Courage is facing fear in the midst of vulnerability. It is estimated that over 60% of physicians meet the definition of burnout, a state of emotional and physical exhaustion, loss of personal identity, lack a sense of accomplishment or productivity. It is impossible to experience what we do without it having an impact us. It is hard to not take medical errors and complications personally. It has been shown time and time again that experiencing a major medical error is correlated with depression and suicidal ideation. We cannot cure all disease or prevent every complication. Our patients will die, sometimes by our own hands. Our decisions can be life and death. We sometimes get it wrong because we're human. And we take on that responsibility day after day for decades. We take it home and we take it personally. And we almost never grieve. Moral injury is when someone engages, fails to prevent, or witnesses acts that conflict with their values or beliefs. We are taking oaths such as this before we even start our training to put our patients' health before our own. When we harm or fail to heal patients despite best efforts, we feel intense guilt. The data on the consequences of physician burnout is overwhelming. You've all heard it. Beyond the personal consequences, however, including the risk of occupational injury, detrimental alcohol use, and suicide, it also impacts patient care. From the view of patient safety in hospital systems, burnout has been associated with poor patient satisfaction, medical errors, and decreased productivity. Why doesn't it constitute impairment? Although I've been asked many times how to fix the healthcare system, I have no idea. The list of contributors to burnout is long and overwhelming. I don't need to preach this to this crowd. Meaningful change, however, will require time and resources and a systemic commitment. You do have the ability to impact change, though. Although it may seem like it, there are organizations, elected officials, institutions that have made it their mission to reduce mental health stigma and lessen the burden on physicians and other healthcare providers. Institutions are making mental health a topic of discussion. Lorna Breen was an ER physician working at the height of the pandemic in New York City. She was a highly successful, beloved, and by all accounts, happy. She died of suicide on April 26, 2020. Her sister, Jennifer Breen Feist, and Corey Feist founded the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation in her honor. And in February of 2022, passed the Provider Protection Act into law, investing $140 million over 3 years into training healthcare providers on suicide prevention, a campaign to address stigma, and working to change licensure. I am sure most people in this room have answered overly broad and invasive mental health questions on applications that are inappropriate at best and mostly violate privacy in the workplace. Through auditing and advocating for change in questions to addressing mental and physical conditions as one, or not at all, and safe haven, no reporting options to physicians like myself receiving care. 36 states to date have or are in the process of changing it, and they are proof that we can affect change. Credentialing questions are next. The JCC itself, whose charge it is to provide safe and quality care for patients, put out a statement recommending organizations not ask about past mental health or treatment. These questions not only have no impact on patient safety, but prevent physicians from seeking help. If you are asked to answer these questions in any credentialing, ask for them to be changed or shoot me an email and I'll work on it. 4 of the 6 current priorities of the U.S. Surgeon General are related to mental health. The effects of isolation, and I don't just mean alone, I mean alone in a room full of people. Loneliness and mortality are comparable to what we consider conventional risk factors. Connection is said to be the cure for addiction. It can make all of our lives better. Organizations outside of medicine are also prioritizing this. This is the grand challenge with the mission to, quote, end mental health stigma in the United States. Yes, companies make those sort of statements. It's a national campaign. At last check, they had over 130 private companies and institutions that was initiated by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute from the University of Utah. You may have already started seeing some of their ads from the Ad Council. Clearly, I'm biased, but I believe that storytelling is at the heart of changing stigma. Only by talking about it will it be normalized. And not just by those afflicted, not just by women. There are people making a difference. You have to prioritize you and your health. You do not need to hit rock bottom or uproot your life to focus on this. Please do not let it get to where I did. Devote time to reflecting on this. Talk to childhood friends that have nothing to do with academic medicine. Live with intent. Think about what you value, not what you think you're supposed to value, and who you value. What are your goals? Then live it. Without clear overarching principles and absolute boundaries, you can check yourself and course correct. This past year wasn't just a thing to get through, it was change in the way I think and feel. I continue to grow and then regress and then continue on the direction of my intent. It's just life, but I'm noticing it now and I'm steering the ship. Grit over resilience. Grit has a plan. Grit is perseverance and passion. Remember that your profession is not your identity. I've thought a lot about my own identity this past year and how difficult it is for anyone who's consumed by mastering a skill, be it in surgery or in sport, to separate those two things. This is not saying that our work isn't incredibly meaningful or that we aren't passionate about caring for our patients. It is an incredible honor and a privilege to be a surgeon. But anything that can be taken away from you is by definition not you. I didn't know who I was without being a tennis player, surgeon, wife, and mother. I had no idea if I would return to work, and I had to figure out who I was without it. Find your people. Surround yourself with authentic people who make you feel safe and supported. Surround yourself with people who inspire you, who leave you feeling better. Prepare for the difficult days that will inevitably come. Wouldn't it be better to arm ourselves with these skills before a crisis? Medical school is tough. General surgery residency and anesthesia residency are really tough. The first few years of being an attending are lonely. You lose your wolf pack. We spend countless hours in training surgical skill, studying for exams, and in academic development. Why can't a small portion of that time be spent in developing skills to withstand the experiences of training, to train ourselves to support each other safely? Work to develop healthy coping mechanisms. Read on psychology, philosophy, mindfulness, stories of other people like us who have struggled. Play. Do something that you lose track of time doing. Do it because it brings you joy and for no other reason. Meditate. It's free and available 24/7. Even a few minutes a day shows objective health benefits. And there's no wrong way to meditate. It really isn't anything new. It's not doing anything. It's just noting your thoughts and emotions without judgment or distractions. Emotional discipline. Learn to respond and not react. Note which part of your brain is in charge. Strive for equanimity. I wish I could say that now it's all rainbows and butterflies, but it's not. I still have rough days and weeks. I still have depression. But I'm building a foundation to fall back on. I know that ignoring or distracting myself only makes it worse. Turning toward the discomfort is a place of practice. Sit there. You will get through it. And that will empower you. Apathy and hopelessness are difficult to push through. You have to decide to do some things that you really don't feel like doing, and for a while. And you have to trust someone telling you that it'll be worth it. But you cannot do it alone. And you are not alone. Practice mindful self-leadership. No one can take away your power to choose. Your options and resources may be limited, but your power to choose is always yours. Learn to say no. Sometimes you have to say good enough. You don't need to read that manuscript 25 times. You can do anything, but not everything. Trust me, I tried. Live with intention, integrity, kindness, and grace. Do everything the best you can, learn from your mistakes, and then let it go. It is in no one else's power to make you happy. Change is constant, but growth is hard. Nothing we value comes easily. Set boundaries, get uncomfortable, sit still, play. It is my hope and your challenge to figure out a way to help people before it is a crisis, getting people to take the first step. As leaders and allies, become as knowledgeable about mental health disease as you are about every other disease. Psychological first aid should be a requirement. This would save a lot more lives than learning about the different fire extinguishers in the hospital. All right, good, that landed. Know the resources where you work. Provide support for trainees and other healthcare providers. Check in with people. People you know have had a tough complication or life stressor. Divorce is brutal. Remember, mental health is health. Substance use disorders are mental health disorders. Depression is a disease. It isn't just a woman's problem. It isn't a character flaw or weakness. Depression says nothing about your competence as a physician. If someone you know is in crisis, just be there. Just let them know their feelings are valid, not that they shouldn't feel them, or that they should feel differently. Suffering is not a competition. Leave the judgment at the door. Don't compare their troubles to other people. Let them know they're not alone. Sit quietly with them, which is hard for us, and listen if they talk. Don't try to fix it. You can't force someone to seek help or to change. Show them compassion and not pity. Talk to them and not about them. Get them the professional support they need if and when they are ready. I want to close with an excerpt from a piece written by comedian and fellow person in recovery, Hank Azaria, about Matthew Perry when he passed away. He does a beautiful job of describing why recovery groups like AA work. As low as we go, we tend to feel we're alone in it. Whether our problem is alcohol, a bad marriage, illness, depression, or strife, we feel that we are the only one who has ever gone through it. Terminal uniqueness. And it's by going into a room with a few or a lot of other people and sharing, saying out loud what it is that's upsetting them, and hearing that from others that we feel a little less alone. In fact, in time, what we become sure of is that the most unfortunate, terrible things we face are actually our greatest strength. And they connect us with others. No matter who it is or what substance that person is hooked on, loneliness is at the root. That's the best we can do in life. Be truthful and hope that these truths become lanterns for others as they wander through the dark. Thank you. By the way, I have my and I genuinely mean this, anyone in the room can email me or text me. I talk to hundreds of people all the time about just about anything you can imagine. So please, if you don't feel comfortable talking to anybody else, reach out to me.
Oh, thank you so much, Carrie. That was so moving, so touching, and your bravery really touched all of our hearts. I want to open up now for Q&A. And as we're waiting for questions to come in through Zoom, I wanted to let everyone know that in the calendar invite sent on Friday, there's resources. So there's 2 resource sheets there. For all of our anesthesiologists, these resource sheets are in the call rooms as well. And we have QR codes throughout the department. And we can send those out again following today's lecture. Does anyone have questions? Jim?
That was a great and moving talk. How are your kids doing?
Do you mean with me talking about this stuff? I had grown up with an alcoholic in my house growing up, and we never talked about it. I was the kid, I've never actually said this in front of a group before, but I was the kid who poured out his alcohol bottles and restashed them, thinking that that was going to make it stop. And so when I went to rehab the first time, I was very open with my kids about it. I always am surprised that I haven't been asked that question after doing this talk for a long time. Fortunately, my now ex was really great. Like the first few weeks, I had my kids come visit me. I was allowed to have visitors, and I asked them if they had questions, and honestly, they were just really happy that I was okay. And I realized that they just wanted to see that I was okay. And now when my Guardian article came out, like literally everyone in our neighborhood, could see it. It wasn't just in a room like this. And so I just prepared the kids before I came out. I said, some people may be bringing this up tomorrow. Do you have any questions? And they're like, no. And then my daughter's like, oh, you're famous. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, great. But honestly, that's the whole point of this, is that it is so widespread and common, and it takes shame away from people to talk about it. It takes shame away from me to talk about it. And it's hard to experience in that until you actually do it. So it's like, again, I don't know how to get that first step for people to do it. But I can say now, my son also, and he's willing, because I've asked them if it's okay for me to, talk about things. But my son during COVID, I'm sure many people in this room have teenagers. It was a really hard time for them. And my son had a pretty severe depressive episode. Of course, then I felt it was my fault, and it was my genes, and, my being around him and all those other things. But recently I just went on a trip with him, and he talked about how he had gotten through it and he feels better, and then, quote, I'm never going to get depressed again. And I said, well, let's roll that back a little bit. If you do, I hope you don't. And it was just a really meaningful conversation, and it made me feel so good that I had sort of stopped that propagating of not talking about things. And so I think I hope it's the right thing. I think it is, and they're doing really good. They're doing great. Yeah. Thank you. And obviously that's the most important thing. It's not your career. It's your kids and you. You're not supposed to make me cry. You're supposed to go the other way.
Partly a question, but also sort of a thank you for bringing up the issue around self-compassion. I think that we are in a field of judgment. We are here to make decisions and be strong, and I think sometimes forgetting how we have to take care of ourselves and also forgive ourselves. And I also really loved your comment about the superpowers. I think that we often think of our weaknesses as weaknesses and forget how they can potentially be a superpower. I say that to my children too, who, when they're feeling fragile, I was like, actually that's your superpower. You just have to learn how to use it. But I guess how do you provide advice to all of us to remember how to give ourselves that self-compassion? How do we remember to do that? And I don't know what inspires you to do that.
I have to say that's probably the hardest thing. I think I told you last night, but when I was playing tennis, I was driven by fear of losing and not anything else. I still get wound up when I think about it, but I used to hit myself with my tennis racket. I had bruises up and down my calves. And this is when I'd be up 6-0, 5-0, 40-11. I'd lose one. I mean, I was intense. You can imagine. And so and that was when I was 8, right? So imagine that just perpetuated itself, right? And if nothing else, and it's funny, I think I was talking to you about it or someone, my daughter playing soccer, and she gets down on herself. I'm like, that's actually not going to make you a better soccer player, right? And it's true, right? If you hear a lot of these athletes who are very successful, they say, well, I just stopped being negative, right? I did get very good on the tennis court when I lost a point, and it was, whatever it was that I shouldn't have missed. I was very good in the performance to put it out of my mind, because in my mind, that would make me better to be successful, but it was the wrong drive, if that makes sense. If you realize that one of my favorite mantras is let it go or be dragged, right? And once it's stopped helping you become better at something, you have to learn to let it go. And it is hard. It is brutal to develop that skill. But that's one of those things actually that meditation helps, is taking a step back and thinking, who is this harming and who's this helping? When you're the symbolic, self-flagellating, the only person that's harming is yourself, and it's helping no one. And if for nothing else, it will make your performance better to try to frame it in a different way. I am so grateful that I actually went through this. I feel like my life is so much fuller and authentic. And even having gone through what I went through, I am grateful for having gone through what I did. And I'm lucky that I got to this other side. And so if you can turn that around and say that this makes it a strength and not a weakness, it's easy for me to say this 3 years down the road. Don't get me wrong. It was like up and down and all around, and I'm done. I'm not going to do this. And so it's not easy. And but that really is clearly the most important thing, is being able to forgive yourself. And then it makes you stronger for other people that you love. Honestly, like my kids see that, like, I don't get on their case about their grade. I try not to. And I just like, I just want you to be happy. And like, my son's like, come on, who are you? Like, what happened to, my mom? And I'm like, it's genuinely true. Like, do they need to get into Stanford? Do they need to get no, they just need to be happy. That's really all. You think about what you truly want. You have to think about your values. So yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I always go off on tangents. Yeah, thanks.
Other questions? Oh, Alyssa.
Thank you so much for such a fabulous conversation. And, I just really appreciate you modeling what it looks like to be a leader in these difficult professions that we're in, and what it looks like and sounds like to speak publicly about the fact that we're not perfect. And it's something that I know is really difficult. And I love the fact that really what this does is it frames it as a leadership skill. And because the reality is we can't build these communities where we have psychological safety to talk about these things when we don't see it modeled by our leaders. And so, I work, a lot of the residents and fellows I work with know that my main talk in the OR is, we talk about the fact that we have a candy dispenser full of drugs that we put our fingerprint on and we can get. And we talk about suicide, and we talk about depression, and we talk about therapy, because it is just so clear to me that it is not happening in enough of our conversations. And so I really just wanted to appreciate you for doing this, because it's hard. And frankly, for modeling the fact that, if you shed a few tears, it does not make you not professional. It is part of being a human being in a profession, in a caring profession. So more of a comment than a question, but thank you.
Well, that always brings up, in terms of, not that it's something to be applauded, but in terms of who's successful at suicide, anesthesiology is number one. And yeah. Oh, so we're number one, right? Like, great. And it's anesthesia, surgery, and ER, right? And so, but the other, I already forgot what I was going to say. I do think that modeling is important, and also and I know I'm in a place of sort of safety, right? Like, I'm trying to speak for people that I know no one's going to fire me now, right? And if they did, I'd make a huge stink, right? We all know that, right? But, so I get that, okay? I'm white, I'm from a, I live in an affluent area, all those other things. I have a lot of privilege. I know that. And so I'm trying to speak for those that I can't, but I also understand how I behave impacts other people now. And I'm aware of that. So in the operating room, if I'm frustrated, I think I cut the nerve, or I do endocrine surgery. So, if I'm worried about something, instead of just getting frustrated and, telling people to be quiet and turn the music off, whatever, I will stop and say, I'm worried. Like, I'll look at the resident, because the resident, I'll say, I'm worried I hurt the nerve. I know, sorry if I'm being short, but this is what I'm feeling right now. Like, I need a minute, instead of just trying to tough it through and then have that person think that's something they did, right? Those are simple things you can do on a day-to-day basis. And the other thing I would say is, people say, well, I don't have any, I keep looking over here because I know there are students and residents over there, but people are like, I can't make change. I'm working 90 hours a week. I'm doing so you can make a change in your box. It's like a Kobe Bryant quote, or your box may be me speaking all over the United States, or it could just be in your own home and in your own, in your own head, right? You can change what's in your head, not change. You can observe it and react to it differently. And it is amazing once you start realizing the stuff that goes in your head. You're like, when I first started doing it, I was like, oh my God, there's so, I had a voice that was actually talking to me that wasn't like me. It was the weirdest thing, but everyone has a different experience with it. But once you can sort of just I don't know, how be present without judging everything that's going through your head or what you're doing. It's like a very freeing moment. I sound very guru-ish right now, but like, and I'm not a religious person, but I became a spiritual person. So, yeah, anyway, peace is very calming.
Carrie, thanks for
Right.
coming.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful to see you again. I'm wondering, when did it all start? Like, depression is a chronic disease. Did you have episodes when you were younger? When did you realize that you had it? And when did the substance use start?
Yeah. So when I was, I mean, I grew up in a, automotive worker town. Like I drank less than all of my friends and all of the adults. And, it was very, very common Midwest, So I honestly, not that it's not a problem, it's just one symptom of me trying to fix my underlying depression. And that's what it is for everyone who uses it in a negative way. It's fun. I'm writing now, and I realized that I was probably 16, 17 when I had my first depressive episode. And I was actually at the French Open after I lost, and I was by myself. I was traveling by myself, basically, and most people do. I mean, there were people at the tournaments that I knew, and I didn't know what it was. I just sat in my room with the drapes closed for like a week, like barely ate. I never thought to ask anybody about it. Like I had it that long. And then with tennis, I didn't want to take an antidepressant. And then going on, then I started going to medical school, and I would have these huge episodes and just kind of tough it out and work harder and run a marathon and do all these other things, which were my way, Forrest Gumping it. I started I started running, and I did all these things that were sort of socially acceptable, on and on and on until like COVID, right? And then all these other, and then the destabilizing part of a relationship that I'd had for 25 years and all those family changes. And so there just wasn't, that's when I started using it for the wrong reason, right? You can have fun drinking. Wine's great. Like it's fine, but doing it alone and to make yourself feel better is, in my opinion, is when it becomes an issue. But overly working, waking up immediately in the morning, like I couldn't relax on a vacation. I never took more than a week off in like 20 years. And because I hated sitting still, because anxiety would come up, all those other things. So I like just chilling out now. Like I can do it. Like feel comfortable sitting in my own space. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I've had it my whole life. No doubt in my mind. 25% of Americans have depression, by the way. It's not uncommon.
Other questions or comments?
So there's one in the on Zoom. How do you start the conversation when you talk with someone you're concerned about?
Just like that. I'm concerned about you. I would say probably, your own friends, right? Everyone's a little different, but the person that, yes, there were tons of people who said you need to take time off, you need to stop drinking, like over the course of a couple of years. But it was actually someone who was in recovery, who happened to be the mother of a friend of mine. We were at soccer practice and she was in recovery, and she was over and I asked her if she wanted a glass of wine. She said, no, I'm in recovery. And I said, oh, I think I should probably quit drinking. It was one of those conversations. And she said, oh, she's like, well, why don't you just start with thinking about what you're grateful for? And it wasn't, you need to stop drinking. You need to do this. You need to do that. It was like, just like, try to figure out the things that actually make you feel good instead of trying to be critical about the things that you're doing badly, right? And what is it that would motivate you, like your kids and your family and all those other things, to do things that are good for yourself, right? So it was just a mind shift a little bit, and everybody's a little different. But I think ultimately, you don't need to do anything. You just need to be there. I love this term, hold space, right? Just like bring them a coffee. These instances that I have of these people that told me these stories was they had no idea I was feeling this way, but he walked me home from work that day, and I had planned on harming myself. Like he just happened to say like, hey, I'm gonna walk you home today and let's sit and have a cup of coffee or whatever. And he did that for this woman that I'm talking about for like 2 weeks straight. They never talked about the elephant in the room, but he was just there. And I think it's the loneliness perspective and just saying like, man, I know this can be tough. I know, sharing your own stories of how you've been there is always helpful. But again, it's compassion. It's not sympathy. There is a clear distinction. Oh, I feel sorry for you because of this. Like, no. And just say like, I'm worried about yours. Is there anything I can do for you? How can I help you? That's it. Or do nothing. Bring them a coffee. Just like go for a walk with them. It's one of those things that they will, when they feel comfortable, they will start talking about it or not. You may never know. But that's just a way to walk around, everywhere, right? Being nice to people. And someone's really grumpy, there's probably a reason they're really grumpy.
Any other questions or comments?
I wanted to make one more comment about my patients, because I get that a lot, like, because my stuff's all over the internet, right? People Google me and it's like, this comes up and not my reviews. The first patient who came in, she's like, oh, this happens all the time now. But the first person who came in, we were chatting and she's like, oh, I watched your video. And I had my immediate thing was to put my head down and kind of sink, right? That shame feeling. And I said, oh, well, I knew this was going to happen, but I'm like, how does it make you feel as my patient? I just asked her. And she said, actually, I didn't put it on my clinic, but I'm in recovery and it made me feel like you're more human and I can relate to you. And so that's happened a number of times. Obviously, I won't know the patients who are like, no, I'm not going to go to that person. But I have to say, overwhelmingly, they're like, oh, again, they're like, oh, you're all over, you're in the news and stuff. I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's right before surgery. I'm like, let's not bring this up. But I have to say, it hasn't been. They feel comfortable. They're not saying, did you ever drink this morning before you can, it's not like that at all. And most people who are your patients are, they've all had someone in their family or themselves who have struggled with one type of mental illness or another, and they like to be able to talk about it. And people who have kids who are struggling, who are in active addiction, it is so hard. Those people need your support too. The parents and the loved ones of these people really need support because somehow they get shamed as well. And so just remember that it's, you don't need to, we don't want to go there and talk to them. They need that more than almost anyone because they're being sort of ostracized and stigmatized, even though it may not have anything to do with them. So just keep that in mind.
Carrie, thanks so much for being here and for this great talk and really sharing your story. Can you talk a little bit about how Rich took you out of the game? Mm-hmm. And I think whenever we do that, it's often like so late. Mm-hmm. There are so many warning things. So what can we maybe do earlier? How could we recognize things earlier where it's not so consequential? Maybe get people help before they get to an area that is so dangerous and stuff. And maybe just if you don't mind talking about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's tough. It took a close friend of mine, and this is after, Saray Parangi had brought me out and talked about it. A bunch of other people had sort of said, like, are you okay? Like, I know the whole thing. And it took someone saying to Rich, who was my immediate boss, he's also my mentor. So I was very close to him and like, our families know each other, things like that. So trust me, he was very uncomfortable when he showed up. He didn't know what to say, right? He was just like, but my close friend said, like, you have to do this. She is not going to listen if she continues to do this. And I was pissed. Oh, I was very angry. Now I'm not. Now I'm grateful. And so you have to be in that position where if you are really concerned about somebody, they can be evaluated and go back to work. You could be wrong. Fine, I'm wrong. You can be mad at me. But I'm telling you, if you have that feeling, it's almost assuredly a correct feeling, right? You're not going to have a feeling about that with someone who's doing fine, right? So be uncomfortable, like even if you just talk to them individually and then you keep showing up. But if you're really concerned about somebody, you have to intervene. It just, you have to. And I know as a leader, it's particularly hard because you don't want to ruin someone's career. You think in your mind that they're going to ruin their careers. But I can tell you that it's like older, the old school chairman that I've done when I've gone to speak, they'll pull me aside afterwards and they're like, oh yeah, I've had over the 30 years I've been the chairman, I've had, 4 or 5 people die, and like I have my own, like people say I have my own private, like, and they feel horrible for those people and their families. And so it's not new. This has been happening for a long, long time, and whatever we're doing isn't working. So I think if you bring it to the conversation, I hope that it makes it just slightly easier for someone to ask for help or take time. And I have to say, like, I thought that everyone was going to be talking about it when I came back. No one even knew I was gone, because everyone's in different, right? They were like, I remember I came to the residency graduation and I walked in, and one of this other colleague of mine was like, hey, let's go grab a drink sometime. And I'm like, okay. I was like, you haven't really heard where I've been, huh? And so people don't really care that much. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter. You just got to take care of yourself and that other person. So it's hard. I've taken a resident to the emergency room before who she didn't want to go. I said, I don't care. We're going. And so I've done those things before for other people. And they're very weak at that moment. So you got to be strong. If you're, they trust you, then take on that responsibility. I know it's really hard when you have how many people in your department? 100? It's hard. So also remember that your leaders are human beings as well, and they bear a lot of burden too.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. This has been so special, our time with you, and you've inspired all of us to become more authentically human and compassionate and self-compassionate. And again, just thank you for your bravery and courage and for doing this work.
Thank you.